my hopefully pretty quick recap here. At a very, very basic level, what I wanted to point out to everybody that's on the call right now is whether you were on a previous webinar or office hour session that we did or not, just want to remind you that there is a sort of Scrible Utah landing page or homepage where you can go to basically find a whole bunch of resources and to get started with us. So it's just scrible.com/Utah, and you will see some videos and most importantly, the kickoff webinar that we did back on October 8th. And that goes much more in depth. It's kind of like a point-by-point detail of how things work and how you can do certain things in the application. We're not going to do that today. And instead, I'm going to kind of give you the overview of what is Scrible and kind of show you some screenshots of how the product works. And then, of course, you're going to hear from Heidi, Yesenia, and Jennifer on specifics. They're going to take some of that specific stuff and show you how they're actually, using that in their schools. So for those of you that are new or need a little bit of recap, really basic question: what is Scrible? There's different ways of thinking of us. A content curation, annotation, and collaboration platform, an advanced research and writing platform, or just a really sort of useful collection of tools that work well together, right? So different ways of thinking of us, and I think that you're going to see that when you hear from the other folks after me. All right, so at a very, very high level, to give you some visuals, what we've done at Scrible is built sort of a super app, if you will, that lets you do a lot of what normally you think of as the research and writing process in one app, instead of having to use a whole bunch of disparate tools, like a standalone citation tool, a standalone PDF organizer, a web clipper thing that you're using to curate sources of information on the web and things like that, right? So we've kind of built that all under one roof. And then we have brought the research work that students do into the writing process through an integration with Google Docs and Microsoft Word. But I think the part that's most interesting for most educators is the analytics dashboard, which I'm going to show you very quickly, but I know each of the other speakers is going to be talking about in a very specific set of examples. But the basic idea here is that because we allow all the students to do all their work under one roof, we're able to kind of bring that research and writing work and close reading work together in an analytics dashboard for teachers and librarians, so they can see students' progress in real time in a way that normally isn't easy or possible, because sometimes they're doing all that work in a whole bunch of different apps. And so it is the first real kind of comprehensive solution in this area, and it's meant to save yourselves and the students that you work with a lot of time. And then the data that comes out of the analytics is meant to basically be used to help personalize the instruction with the students in a way that normally, again, isn't necessarily easy or quick. Again, for those that are new to us, what are the major parts of Scrible? There's sort of three major parts to the system, if you will. There's a browser extension, which helps you curate, annotate, and actually cite content when you're out there, looking at articles and doing research on the web, for example. There's a second piece, which is the website that you log into at scrible.com, and that is where you can log into your account and see all the articles and the research you've saved. It's also a place where you can create outlines and bibliographies and do a bunch of other work as well as a student. And then as an educator, you can review student work, create assignments, etc. So, and some of that's going to get covered a little bit later. And then the third piece is if you are actually using us for a paper, for a writing exercise. I mentioned earlier that we have an integration with Google Docs and Microsoft Word. So we have what's called a word processor add-on or add-in that helps you bring your research into the writing process. And I'm going to give you a quick show of how that works as well. So I'm going to zip through this in the interest of time, but basically I've got a couple screenshots that give you a quick sense of how this works. So let's say, for example, I'm a student writing a paper about space exploration, and I come across an article on the web that looks interesting, like the one that you see here. The student would click on our Scribble Chrome extension, which you see here in the top right corner. And when they do that, two things happen. First, the article gets saved to their Scribble library in the cloud, where it lives forever, even if the original goes offline. And the second thing that happens when you click on the Chrome extension is that we float this toolbar on top of the page, which the student can then use to richly annotate the article, to highlight quotes, to add comments in the sidebar, to be thoughtful about the content that they're reading, and so forth. And then you'll notice that each of the comments in the comment sidebar actually has a reply option at the bottom. So if this is a shared article, people can have a discourse in the margin, because you can have multiple people kind of commenting and replying to one another, just like you might have, for example, in the comments of a Google Doc, for example. And then we also bake citation capture early into the research process. So what you're seeing here is that we have actually extracted citation information from the article, and we've pre-filled a bunch of the features down below that you need for properly formatted citation, which you see rendered in real time up top here. And we support all the different citation styles, even though what you're seeing right now, right here in the screenshot, is the APA style. And all the work the student's doing, highlighting, editing citation fields, replying to comments on shared articles, it's all getting auto-saved as they go. So it's kind of like Google Docs, where you don't have to worry so much about losing work because the browser crashes or your bandwidth is choking. And we know that that's a bigger concern right now because so many people are working from home, and you may not necessarily live in an area that has great internet connection. So the fact that we've built some resiliency and the auto-saving makes it a little bit easier for you to be able to make sure that your work is getting saved as you go along. All the work that's getting saved is getting saved to your Scribble library in the cloud, and you can go to our site and log in with your Scribble credentials, or you can click on this little library button in the toolbar, and it'll open up a new browser tab and bring you right into your library. Now, your library is a place where you can see all the articles that you've curated. These could be web pages like the one we were looking at. They could also be bookmarks that you've imported from your browser. But really important, Scribble is not just a system that helps you work with web content. In fact, you'll see that later in some examples that Yesenia is going to talk about. We have built our own cloud-based PDF viewer and annotator. And so you can actually bring PDFs into Scribble to basically annotate and work with them as well. And there's different ways of doing that. So since we've built our own cloud-based PDF viewer and annotator, let's say you're looking at a PDF either in a database like EBSCO or on the open web. And when you're on the open web and you click on a PDF these days, it'll typically open in Chrome or whatever browser you're using. But if you're using Chrome and you're looking at that PDF in the browser, when you click on our Chrome extension, it'll actually transfer that PDF directly to our viewer. It'll save it to your library, like you see here, and then it's ready to annotate all with one click. And that can be really powerful because I know many of you are using Chromebooks. And as you know, Chromebooks aren't really designed for a lot of local storage. And so if you have students that are at home that are doing research on the web, for example, they can easily just click on their Chrome extension while they're curating our information on the web, even if it's a PDF, and it'll very easily just quickly basically transfer those articles from their browser directly into their Scribble library without ever having to make a pit stop on their desktop, which is helpful, right, if you're using a Chromebook in particular. Now, if you are using a desktop machine, if you're using a machine that does have a lot of desktop storage, like a PC or a Mac, we do give you the ability to drag and drop files into your Scribble library. And when you do that, we upload it to your library and it lives alongside everything else you've curated from the web right here. So different ways of getting information into Scribble and different kinds of content. It's not just about clipping stuff from the web. Whatever you bring into your library, you can see that you can use tags here to organize, or you can actually rely on full text search. The reason for that is that we actually full text index all the content in your library. So you can do a simple keyword search, like search for the word Mars here, and we'll go and search the full text of every article you've added to your library, whether it's a web page or a PDF, and we help you find a needle in a haystack. So it's just like doing a search for a word in your Gmail account or something like that, where you can find just the articles in this case that are relevant to whatever you've searched for. And then we've also built a bunch of downstream tools that help you, with the research and writing process. For example, you can create a bibliography really easily. You can create an outline really easily. We even embed the Google Docs viewer and the Word Online viewer under the Papers tab so that all the students' work is really right there. Now, when we do that, we're not obviously asking you to write in a word processor we've built. We actually have you still writing in Google Docs or Microsoft Word or whatever it is that you're using. It's just that we embed the viewer under the Papers tab so that the student can easily flip through all their tabs and say, okay, I can see my sources, my annotations, my bibliography, my outline, and my paper all in one place. And this becomes really useful later for teachers or librarians who are working with students because they can actually jump into a student's library and see all these different aspects of their work in one place just by quickly flipping through all the different tabs. Last thing I'll say here is that this is one library for this particular paper or project, but you can actually have multiple libraries. So you can have one for your English paper, one for your National History Day project, one for your science fair project, and so forth. And every library that you have, you can see that by clicking on this little libraries tab on the left-hand side. And you'll see a list slide out of all the different libraries you have access to. And you can create new libraries. You can give it a name, give it a description. If you're the owner of a library, you can actually invite other people to collaborate in that library so that you can have sort of collaborative libraries as common workspaces for content you're curating and sharing. And if you're a teacher, you can create a class library, which could be a great way to really easily disseminate a bunch of curated texts, or even have that be a place where you can actually provide a set of articles as a starting point for students that are doing research. And then the last student side thing I want to quickly point out is that we have that word processor add-on that I mentioned earlier. So if you are a student, let's say, that's writing a paper, and maybe in week 1, your teacher had you do the research. In week 2, you created the outline. In week 3, you're here, writing the paper now. As a student, when I come into Google Docs in this example, we have the same thing for Microsoft Word, by the way, if you're using Microsoft stuff. But if you're using Google Docs, as I'm going to show you in this example, we have an add-on called Scrible Writer, which is basically a sidebar that sits within the Google Docs interface. And in that sidebar, what we've done is basically embedded your Scribble library. So students can really easily look at, all their sources and, a bunch of information that you would normally see in their library, like I showed you on the last slide, but it's slimmed down and embedded right here so that they have easy access to their research on the right while they're writing their paper on the left. And so if I'm a student that, is now starting to write my paper, I can come in here, I can browse my articles that I had maybe saved, 2 weeks ago. And as I hover over those different articles, I can see, oh, here's an article that looks really interesting. Let me go one level deeper to see what, I did in that article. Oh, here are all my annotations. Oh yeah, this green highlighted annotation was something really interesting that I wanted to use as a quote in my paper. So I can actually click on this plus button, and we will go and grab that green highlighted text out of the article in the student's library and drop it into the paper and put it in quotes and insert an in-text parenthetical citation at the end, right? So it really just streamlines bringing that research into the writing process. Likewise, you can do a search, because sometimes if you have a lot of content or you haven't looked at it recently, search is a better way to find things. So instead of browsing, you can type, again, Mars, click search, and we will go and find all that content. For example, those highlights and those comments that you made that has a search term in there. And then you can, again, of course, click on one of those and bring that into the paper. Now, I know we're in the weeds, but for all of you that work with students, you know that that's where the pain and the time suck is. And that's part of the reason why we get into the weeds here with you. We really try to really use the power of modern software to help automate some of the mundane stuff that students normally get bogged down in, so they can free up some of that time to spend on the more critical thinking aspects of the process, which is frankly what I think Heidi, Yesenia, and Jennifer will be speaking to at greater depth. And I'll just mention quickly here that we also have the outline tab built right into the Google Docs add-on, so that if you've already built your outline, let's say in week 2, you can call up your outline and click insert, and it'll insert the whole outline into the paper to help jumpstart the writing process. And then, of course, we have the bibliography always available within the bibliography tab here as well. And we insert the bibliography on the last page of the document and keep that up to date so that the student can always know that their bibliography is up to date and not have to worry about keeping track of that so much. And that's part of the reason why we get into the weeds. Normally students lose a lot of time and there's a lot of cognitive load on just keeping track of things. And part of what we're trying to do, again, is use the power of modern software to help take some of that cognitive load off the students and help them save time so they can work on the more critical thinking aspects of the process. All right, and then I think lastly, I wanted to just point out that because all that work is being done under one roof in one app, like I just showed you, all that work that we just looked at in the last 3 slides of students curating and annotating and organizing and then beginning to get into the writing process, that work that they're doing is what populates the data in this analytics dashboard that I'm showing you here. And so, for example, for an assignment, we can show teachers and librarians how many students are on target and off target for the different steps in the process. So you can see kind of at a glance where everybody is at a classroom level. And you can see maybe these are the 5 students that haven't even started the research yet, and these are the students you need to focus your time and energy on. We also have the data at the individual student level. So we can show you that Jordan here has collected 6 articles. She's met the first goal, on her way to meeting the second goal. Susan's a rock star because she's already turned it in and she's in the green. Kara here still has a lot of work left to do, right? All things that are really great to know sooner rather than later, so that you can help students stay on track and help them course correct if they're getting too far behind or they're kind of things are going off the rails. And what we found, and be interested to hear what Yesenia, Heidi, and Jennifer may think about this as well as they go along. What we found is that being able to do this kind of tracking has become sort of more important now during the pandemic, because you don't have the ease of necessarily kind of just browsing over your students' shoulders to sort of see where they are when they're in class working on a Chromebook, right? So the fact that we kind of put this whole process online and give you access to the students' work, as well as the data and the analytics around it, makes it easier to do sort of virtual check-ins from home and then be able to provide formative feedback in a way that normally isn't normally easy even if you are in class, but is particularly impossible right now in some places because you're doing virtual or hybrid learning. And then the last thing I wanted to point out, which I know one of them is going to be talking about in some depth, is that we are able to kind of categorize the information that students are pulling together into some major buckets so that you can see, for example, two of these articles are coming from government websites, one's coming from a Wikipedia article, and so forth. And so at a very high level, you can get a quick sense of the credibility and diversity of sources students are using. And we are compatible with a lot of the databases out there as well. So Gale, EBSCO, Britannica, JSTOR, et cetera. And we're able to show you that now as well, even though it's not shown on here on this slide. I'm going to just flash this up there, but I'm gonna really let Jennifer kind of talk about this in some depth because this is really kind of what they've been focused on at Caddo Parish. But I just want to set it up for her, and that is to say that you all may have heard of me talking to you about Scribble from a research and writing perspective, and that's definitely true, and that's a lot of what Heidi and Yesenia are going to talk about. But a lot of people looked at our stuff and said, "Hey, this could be really valuable for close reading using the annotation system." And there's some obvious reasons for that. We've got a really rich annotation system that works across web content and PDFs. You can bring in any content that you like, and you can use the annotation system in a real-time, concurrent, collaborative way, the way that people are used to in Google Docs. So you can have multiple people annotating the same article at the same time, and everybody sees each other's changes in real time, right? So those are some really valuable mechanisms. And then what you do with that is what Jennifer is going to talk about. And also, I believe, I think Yesenia is going to hit upon this a little bit, that we had launched some new capabilities back in January that actually make it a little bit easier for students to do close reading and text analysis using our annotation system. So we've built features like read aloud translations and definitions. And while those things are not new concepts in the world, the way that we've built them is a little bit interesting because we get to combine them with annotation. And I'm not going to go into that in depth, but maybe in the chat, once I'm done speaking, I'll drop in a link to a blog post that talks about that. And Yesenia will be speaking about that as well. But these are all things that make us additionally valuable for close reading and text analysis, and also for special ed and ELL, not just for research and writing, and not just for the areas that you might have thought of us for previously. I think I've already hit on this, but I'll just flash this up here that we're all, we're useful because we're integrated across the Google and Microsoft ecosystems. And also we work with a variety of other systems out there, which I know many of your schools and districts are using. So with that, I'm going to stop here and hand the mic to